Good afternoon, students. Welcome to the lecture of Real Analysis 2. We have started Egorov theorem proof in the last lecture. Okay, and we have left the proof in between. Therefore, let us complete the proof. Let me just repeat the statement of Egorov theorem. Egorov theorem says that f and b the sequence of measurable functions that converge to a real value function f almost everywhere on a measurable set E of finite measure, then it is asked us to prove that for a given eta greater than 0, there exists a subset A of E with measure of A less than eta such that Fn converges uniformly to F on E minus A. See, whenever I am writing on E minus A, what does it mean? This converges, uniform convergence do not hold on the elements of A. Correct, no? If it do not hold for the elements of A, where the set A is with measure less than eta, for every eta positive, means the measure of the set A is 0. Therefore, one can conclude that this statement means that Fn converges uniformly to F almost everywhere on E. Almost everywhere on E. To prove this Egorov's theorem, we were using this proposition. We have stated this proposition without proof. A statement only is under consideration. The statement says that Fn converges to F almost everywhere. Then there exists a subset A such that measure A is less than delta and mod of Fnx minus Fx less than epsilon. Now, while writing the Egorov theorem, we were considering the particular cases or particular values of epsilon and delta, and we were just using this preposition. Actually, this is the weaker form of Egorov theorem, one can say. Okay, therefore here we have started initially for the values of epsilon to be 1, delta to be eta by 2. Then there exists a measurable set A2 such that A2 is, A1 such that A1 is subset of E with measure of E less than eta by 2. Then there exists a natural number N1 such that statement mod Fnx minus f of x less than 1 for all n greater equal by N1 and for the elements x in E minus A1. And this E minus A1 we will call as sum E1. Next, let us take the different next value of epsilon to be say half, delta to be eta upon 2 square. Then by this proposition again there exists a measurable set A2 in E1 such that measure of E2 is less than eta upon 2 square, and there exists a natural number N2 such that mod Fnx minus f of x less than half for all n greater than or equals to N2, and x is in E1 minus E2 and we will call it as sum E2. But if I just look at this E2, which is E1 minus E2, with this steps, I can say this is E minus A1 union A2. Next, continuing this process for the kth step, we will get measure of ak is less than eta upon 2 raised to k and a natural number nk such that mod Fnx minus f of x less than 1 by k for all n greater than or equals to nk and x is in ek. Now what is ek? By the definition, ek is ek minus 1 minus ak. But we have already proved that this will be E minus union of all those ai's. Union of all those ai from 1 to k. Now let us assume this to be set A. Okay? Because the statement in Egorov theorem we wanted to prove for the set E minus A. Therefore, let me take this to be A. Therefore, A I am considering a countable, here it is finite union, we will consider countable union of AK. No doubt this will be contained in E because all A1, A2 are the subsets of E, therefore countable union is also a subset of E. Let me check what is the major value. Major value of A is measure of union AK less than or equals to summation measure of AK because this is countable is subadditive, and therefore with this this summation is this measure is less than eta upon 2 raised to k. I have substituted taking eta out of the summation because the summation is running over a parameter k. Summation k 1 upon 2 raised to k gives the value 1. Therefore, we have proved that there exists a subset A of E with measure less than eta. With measure less than eta, one can say half of the proof of Egorov theorem hold. Correct? Let me just call this to be statement number 1. Okay, and whatever this we have proved measure of A less than eta, let me call it as statement number 2. Okay, now let me check for the elements E minus A. Before that, Why we are checking for the elements of E minus A? Because whatever this convergence, uniform convergence we wanted to prove, this is for the elements of E minus A. So we will first find out what is E minus A and then we will prove the statement also. What is E minus A? E minus A, we have taken countable union of AKs, right now? Countable union of AK. How can I evaluate this E minus union? A minus B, we were writing A intersection B complement, no? Right? Therefore, E minus this, how can I write? Is it E intersection union AK complement? Right now, this is complement. Okay, the union, complement of this union. What is the complement of this union?
Intersection of AK complement.
Yes, this is intersection of AK complement. K runs from 1 to infinity. Okay. Therefore, what this is giving us actually, let me put it on the next page. E minus A is E intersection AK complement. K runs from 1 to infinity. Let me just run up this intersection over K. If I run up the intersection, what will be the terms? No need to write a bracket. Is it A1 complement intersection, A2 complement intersection, A3 complement intersection, so on. Somewhere we will get AN complement intersection and again it is continued. Right now? Now for the sake of convenience, may I have an adjustment as. Okay, see what in the first bracket I will collect E minus A1 intersection A1 complement. I want to find out the second bracket as E intersection A1 complement intersection A2 complement. In the third, I wanted to write E intersection A1 complement intersection A2 complement intersection A3 complement and so on. Okay. If I take the intersection of the sets I have written, whether it gives us the previous statement. Check again. E intersection A1, E intersection A1. Here also we have E intersection A1. And associativity we can use for the intersection purpose. Therefore, what is the intersection? E intersection A1 complement, E intersection A1 complement. Is it E intersection A1 complement itself? Intersected with A2 complement. Therefore, this two terms actually giving us E intersection A1 complement, intersection A2 complement. Right now, these two terms together gives us this. Again, if I take the intersection with this third term, again the first three terms, if I take these two are same again. Therefore, what will be the intersection of these two again? This will be the intersection, right now. Therefore, finally we will get E intersection A1 complement, intersection A2 complement, intersection A3 complement and so on. Therefore, whatever we have written, this is equivalent to this one. Is this step clear to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. If it is true, because here these two terms are same, intersection is intersection A1 complement, again intersected with A2 complement, which finally gives us this term. This is whatever we have written. Why we have written in these brackets? Because we know already E intersection A1 complement is nothing but E minus A1 and which is nothing but E1. So the first bracket is E1. What was the second bracket?
E1 minus A2.
Very good. This is actually E minus, first I will write E intersection A1 union A2 complement, which is E minus A1 union A2, right now? Which is nothing but E2. Therefore, the first bracket is E1, second bracket is E2, third bracket is E3 and so on. So first shall I write this E minus A as, first is E1, second is E2, third will be E3 and so on. Right? Therefore, may I write, as this is a countable intersection, may I write this is countable intersection EK, K runs from 1 to infinity. What we have obtained E minus A we have obtained as intersection EK. Okay, now let us start with one element x in E minus A so that we can verify the statement of Egorov theorem. That is, Fn converges uniformly to F on E minus A. E minus A we have found what it is. This is the countable intersection of EKs. Now, if I start with one element in x minus E minus A, one element x in E minus A, okay, and we will check whether it is going to give you uniform convergence or not. But what is E minus A? This is intersection EK, k equal to 1 to infinity. If x belongs to the intersection of EK, may I write x belongs to EK for all k belongs to n or k equals to 1 to so on, right? X is present in every EK. Right now? Now if x is present for every EK, what kind of statement we have? See here from 1. For all x in EK, what kind of statement is true? Mod of fnx minus fx less than 1 by k. Right now? Therefore I can write from 1. If x is in EK, what it will imply? Mod of fn of x minus f of x less than 1 by k for all n greater or equal by nk. Nk is that stage or natural number. But what we wanted to prove, instead of 1 by k, what we should have actually, in order to prove uniform convergence, this should be epsilon, no? This should be epsilon. Therefore, what I will do for every given epsilon greater than 0, we will choose this k, integer k, such that, what such that? Epsilon is greater than 1 by k. Now, actually I wanted to write this is less than by epsilon now. Then what should be a relation between 1 by k and epsilon? 1 by k less than epsilon, no?
Epsilon greater than.
Yes, that is epsilon greater than 1 by k. Now, for given epsilon greater than 0, choose an integer k such that, what such that? 1 by k less than epsilon. Then what is this above equation is becoming? Mod of fn of x minus f of x less than epsilon.
Yes, ma'am.
Or shall I write less than 1 by k less than epsilon? Less than 1 by k less than 1 by k less than epsilon. And for all n greater or equal by nk and x is in E minus A, right now? Okay, so we have mod of fn of x minus f of x less than epsilon for all n greater or equal by nk, x is in E minus A. What this shows that? This shows that fn is
Uniformly convergent.
fn is uniformly convergent on E minus A. On E minus A is equivalent to fn uniformly converges almost everywhere on E. Right now? Therefore, what this Egorov theorem tells us, if the sequence is pointwise convergence almost everywhere on E, then it is also uniformly convergence almost everywhere on E or on E minus A. Both the statement means the same. This is a stronger condition. This is the weaker form of preposition. Weaker form of Egorov theorem one can say. And using this preposition, we have proved the Egorov theorem. If you have any difficulty in the proof of Egorov theorem, you can ask me. You can unmute yourself and ask. Yes, any difficulty with this?
No, ma'am.
Good. Okay, this way we have completed Egorov theorem, and Egorov theorem is the last point of your unit number 2. Now in the next lecture we were going to start unit number 3, Lebesgue integration. Okay, but I just want to discuss, we have already studied Riemann integration in semester number 1, no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then why you feel there is a need to study new integration called as Riemann and Lebesgue integration? Generally, a new theory is being developed only if the old theory is being extended, or old theory has some drawbacks, and just to remove those drawbacks, a new one will be invented. Right now, one should think what are the drawbacks on Riemann integration. Instead of drawbacks, I will just say what should be the conditions and what are the conditions imposed on the function and the domain, so that to find out the Riemann integration.
Ma'am, in Riemann integration, we are defining function for interval, and
Closed
in Lebesgue,
interval.
close the interval.
Yes.
And for Lebesgue integral, it is for set.
For an arbitrary set, any set one
Arbitrary.
can define. Also, for Riemann integration, we need a function to be bounded function. Okay. Therefore, we can say these two are the drawbacks of Riemann integration theory. It is defined only for the closed interval. Riemann integration domain is only closed interval. We cannot define Riemann integration for an arbitrary set. And Henry Lebesgue has pointed out this drawback, and he has given the new integration called as Lebesgue integration, and that is what our unit number 3. And we will study this unit number 3 in the next lecture. Thank you for being with me for this lecture. If you have any difficulties regarding up to this, unit number 1 and 2, both the units, if you have any difficulty, you can discuss. Yes, any difficulty with this, if you have. How many points we have covered from the starting? Let us just recall. Okay. We wanted to have a measure, which is an extension of a length function, no? Therefore, first measure we have defined is an outer measure. Okay. How many properties this outer measure has?
Non-negative, translation invariant, countable is subadditive, and
monotone also.
Monotone, and some length interval.
Length of an interval is outer measure. Good. But
yes, ma'am.
This outer measure fails to prove the property countable additivity. Actually, it is giving us countable subadditivity. That's why there is a need to define a new measure called as Lebesgue measure. What we have done in this Lebesgue measure? We have just restricted. Yes, we have just restricted the domain. What is the domain we have taken?
Collection of measurable sets.
Measurable sets. Okay. Measurable set is one more definition we have seen in between. What is measurable set? Set E is said to be measurable if it, for any arbitrary set, it gives you measure of A is measure of A intersection E added with measure of A intersection E complement. Whenever this set is going to satisfy this condition, this criteria, the set is called as measurable set. Then restricting the domain of outer measure to be the set collection of all measurable sets, we have proved that Lebesgue measure is going to satisfy countable additivity, but only for pairwise disjoint sets. Remember, right? Only for pairwise disjoint measurable sets. Okay. Then measurable function we have defined. What is measurable function? Measurable function is a function having measurable set as a domain, whose domain is measurable set, and it satisfies one of the 4 statements. Which kind of statement? Collection of the elements x such that f of x greater than alpha is a measurable set. That greater than alpha one can replace with less than alpha, greater equal alpha, less than or equals to alpha. We have seen many examples also, no? And if it satisfies the set is measurable, defined on measurable domain, then the say function is measurable function. Then we have proved some important functions also, simple function, characteristic function, step function, and we have checked out these measurability of these functions also. Okay, and the last point we have seen is Littlewood's three principles, and out of the three we have given the proof of third principle also by Egorov theorem. This is what we have done up to now. In the next lecture we will start with Lebesgue integration, which is going to be defined for an arbitrary state. Time being, let me stop for today. Thank you for being with me for this lecture.